Thanks for tuning into TellyCast. Each week, we speak with TV's movers and shakers to get the latest insight and opinion on industry developments. There's a new episode every Thursday. Our website, TellyCast.com, includes additional exclusive feature content from TV's thought leaders. Articles are free to read. Just register on TellyCast.com. And while you're there, why not sign up for our free newsletter, TellyCast Plus? Thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoy the show.
TellyCast, the TV industry news review.
Hi, I'm Justin Crosby, and welcome to this week's TellyCast. In this week's show, we fill the hole left by the cancelled Natpe Miami event by focusing on current developments in the LATAM content industry. My guests are Cesar Diaz of 7A Media and Fabricio Ferrara, International Business Director at Prensario International. It's all coming up on this week's TellyCast. My first guest on this week's show is industry veteran, founder and CEO of 7A Media, Cesar Diaz. Welcome to TellyCast, Cesar. How are you doing?
Great, Justin. Thanks for having me on.
Now, you're in Miami, right?
I am in sunny Miami.
Oh, sunny Miami. And
for those of us who weren't able to come to Miami this week, I'll give you the forecast. It's bright and sunny, and temperatures are just wonderful. In Fahrenheit, I guess it's about 7-ish. It would be what, about 15, 16, 17 Celsius?
Right. Okay. Thank you, Cesar. That's fine. Just rub a bit more salt into the sort of that wound there.
We'll get into that discussion a little bit later on, but just thought I'd start off with that weather forecast.
You know, lots of industry execs obviously were planning to make the trip to Miami from various different corners of the planet. First of all, tell us about your background, Cesar, because there's lots of people will be aware of you, of course, but others may not have come across 7A Media. You've been involved in many big distribution businesses within the LATAM market for a number of years. Can you just talk us through that a little bit?
I started off, and I'm an original from Venezuela, born and not raised, but started off with a Venezuelan network called Radio Caracas Television, RCTV. And those were the golden years of the classic Latin telenovela, whom a lot of industry people who have been around may know that the classic telenovela from Latin America had a boom era in the 90s, let's call it. They were already successful in Latin America, obviously, but it was, back in the 90s where it really boomed and grew out of its shell and went to Eastern Europe and just basically captured or opened up markets there when Eastern Europe was opening up. And so we had quite a wonderful runtime. From there, I jumped over to Venevision, which was the rival network, I guess, at that time. And that was a network that run by the Cisneros Group, who were very media conglomerate, and they started off several projects within their tenure internationally, such as launching DirecTV in Latin America, and they later bought into Univision here in the U.S. Spanish network. From there, and having participated, I guess, in exploiting that boom of the telenovela, I then went to Telefe International, the network in Argentina, and also began exploiting and selling internationally their telenovelas. And eventually came around, Telefónica Spain bought into that and went to work with them. And then at one point, like a prodigal son, I went back to Venevision and ended up my career there, 22-year career with them until, the industry changed and things happened. And so I launched 7A Media and went independent as a one-man band, just trying to, I guess, calm things a bit. Did that and launched it in 2015. So from there on, and I guess I'm getting into my 7th year as an independent and having lots of fun with that, and still covering a lot of the Latin American market and their needs.
It's always fascinated me. First of all, why are telenovelas so popular? And you talked about Eastern Europe, why they're so popular in Eastern Europe. Why do they travel so well? And what are the other markets around the world for telenovelas?
Telenovela in Eastern Europe, it came in at the right time and the right place. It just evolved from there. I think it was the right time because these Eastern European bloc countries were opening up, and they were, just happening to be in their, launching and celebrating their independence from, their political situations. The television industry was at a dire need for content in those times. And here came along a content that was long running. You could air it every day. It's a storytelling process that you could air Monday through Friday. And most important, with a storytelling, it was a love story, an impossible love, something that people would watch or hear and then just get captivated and root for the good guy and the bad guy. So it was always that. It was the rags to riches story of, a poor girl who, I don't know, through luck and whatever, comes into a different role, and all of a sudden from being extremely poor came in to be very wealthy, and then had the love of her life. So all these stories intertwine, and it just made it incredibly interesting, and audience gathered ratings on it. So it fit the perfect time in there. And from there, in Spain, it also had their boom. So every territory went by having their own recognition. I don't want to say that this is a unique type of format or story or type of content, but I mean, in the U.S., it's the typical soap opera that's been on for gajillion years, and now the same type of storyline or the underlying is working in other territories. I mean, for now, I think most of us are quite clear that the Turkish are enjoying a beautiful boom of their product or their contents. But if you look at the storylines, they're the same type of telenovelas that Latins, have been producing, and other territories have been producing. So I guess it's human nature, to seek and to follow that impossible dream, that rags to riches story, the Cinderella type story.
And that's a good point about Turkish industry and telenovelas. Now, they're now importing their shows into South America as well, aren't they?
Oh, yes. They're very much enjoying a healthy boom here in Latin America, and they have been for quite some time now.
As we were talking about Natpe Miami and the cancellation of the event just over a week ago, there's pretty much been no LATAM markets for about 2 years. And we know that the streamers have hoovered up, lots of subscribers during the pandemic. How have A, the lack of markets, and B, the streamers coming into the region affected buying trends in Latin America?
Just a slight observation on the comment that there haven't been any markets for the past 2 years, it is true, although in November of last year, 2.5 months ago, we did have MIP Cancun.
Oh, yes.
Which had also been absent for not quite the 2 years, but a year and a half. And they had a presence or face-to-face market much more slimmed than their previous market. I think the mention was that about half the attendance on it. That was a very good positive sign. I did not go, unfortunately. I couldn't make it, but I did hear a lot of the comments and followed up a lot with buyers and sellers. And the general overall comment was very, very positive. So that sort of led up to, Natpe was saying, well, if Cancun had, that situation at Natpe, it's going to be grand. On the second part of the question, yeah, I think definitely the whole industry worldwide has changed a little bit with the oncoming boom of the streamers and all of the new platforms, and Latin America is no stranger to that either. We've been impacted. The big guys or the big boys are now going directly to consumers with all the streaming platforms, and so it's had an effect and an impact on the other fellows, the free TVs or the pay TV channels now. So it's now all hands on deck to meet up and try to exploit in whichever way we can. whether it be getting to the big platforms who are streaming so that they can also have content for it, and feeding or trying to meet the demands of the other players, the free TV stations, which are now seeing less content available because the studios are reserving a lot of their first windows.
And what about fast channels in Latin America? Have they made the same sort of impact that we've seen across many other territories in 2021?
It's interesting about fast channels. My particular, very personal view is that they may not be having, or for Latin America, it hasn't come to their time. It's true that consumers in Latin America would rather view something and be able to look. It doesn't matter to viewing the ads rather than paying a subscription on it. But I think fast channels are still not up to par in Latin America in terms of timing. Maybe next year or later on for this year. But things travel so much, so we're getting bombarded with all kinds of options to view different types of channels. So fast channels is yet another formula, but still there's so much more to see still in Latin America rather than already having the recourse to go to a fast channel to view old shows, I guess.
Tell us about 7A, what you're currently working on and what's selling well, what you're finding is really connecting with networks and viewers.
In a general aspect, the local Latin American productions, in whatever format they may be, but basically either as movies or series, is what's attracting the platforms and the streamers at most. There is an incredible amount of creative talent all around the region, and local production is at an all-time boom. And so there's great stories coming out of the region. That's basically the main thrust where things are happening the most. Formats in terms of game shows and whatnot are also very popular, even though they're not Latin America. I mean, they're the typical game show formats that you're looking at that, but yet that is driving a local production as stimulus. So there's a lot more local production happening in the region. And with that said, I mean, as I mentioned in the first part, that has driven a creative talent or a pool of talent to develop new ideas and be able to develop them. So that's something where I'm also trying to get into. We're trying to develop a couple of shows and see if that's going to be working. As everyone knows, is into production. I mean, the production takes a lot more time and a lot more dedication and a lot more, grinding at it, but certainly worth the while in the region.
We've seen local content really becoming successful globally. I mean, I guess Squid Game over the last few months has been one of the biggest international hits. We've also seen Money Heist doing extremely well. Do you think about now is the time for a South American show like that to really have a breakout international hit? Do you think that with all of this new production that you're talking about, we can expect to see a Brazilian Squid Game, for example, or a Argentinian Squid Game? Did you expect to see that in the coming months and years ahead?
Yeah, and sooner than later. We've already seen a good top-rated cast move into Hollywood or establish themselves in Hollywood. We've seen foreign movies from Latin America and from Spain, or Spanish-speaking movies, make it into the Oscar game. In television, I'm not surprised that we'll get obviously maybe not as successful as a Money Heist from Spain, but certainly something that will be able to gather momentum and success. I don't think that's far off.
We talk about where the hot new regions are for format development or production. We've seen obviously South Korea, an amazing success over the last couple of years. We've seen Belgium be a home to lots of successful formats. If we talk about the LATAM region, if you were to put your money on a territory spawning these sort of hits? Is it as just simple as probably come from Brazil because there's literally a much bigger industry, or Mexico, or is there a particular region that you think is or territory that's really interesting in terms of the type of the show and perhaps their approach to program making?
I think you hit it on the nail. I think Brazil by itself, it should be dealt separately because they're just such a huge market. Their quality of production is exceptional and now very affordable. Moving that aside and respectfully giving the merit that they deserve, they do deserve it. Then in the Spanish-speaking Latin America, I think Mexico obviously is leading that pack in terms of production, in terms of costs to produce, and also in terms of production entities which are coming out with incredible creative ideas.
It certainly seems to me, with all of this local production boom that you mentioned, that it's definitely a region to look out for, and I'm sure you're looking very closely to make sure that you catch those early formats or those early shows. Is there anything that you've got on your books in your catalog at the moment that you think has got the potential to be a big global hit?
Well, like I said, I'm working on a couple of productions right now, and there's one particular big project. Unfortunately, I can't go too much in detail because I've got NDAs signed all over the place. But again, stressing the fact that local creative content with an international flavor, with a Latin American themed locale or justification for that. That's the main thrust on that. Hopefully there'll be something going. And in terms of, Latin America is also, that's not to say that Latin America still does not feed off the international markets or the international content. So in that role, I represent a couple of companies. And so we're always looking towards the inside, I guess, to feed the needs or meet the needs of some of the broadcasters, whether they be free TV or, cable or even the streamers. There's always need for content.
It seems to be an insatiable appetite for content right around the world.
Thank goodness for that.
Yes, but unfortunately, no markets to sell them in. With Natpe Miami cancellation, for a company like yours as an independent sales and distribution business, how impactful is it on you that the event didn't go on? And I know everybody's dealing on Zoom and everybody's doing back-to-back Zooms and have been for many years. It is years now, isn't it? Do you think it'll have a major impact on you, or now you're able to focus on another market in the future and see what opportunities there are along the way?
To me, and I'm sure to many colleagues, the true impact of not having a market is not really that grave or that serious or that damaging. And we are certainly, hungry to have a face-to-face type of market because I think it's more of a human nature. I miss the face-to-face. I miss sitting down with a client, and my gosh, now we'll have anecdotes, all COVID anecdotes all over the place to have, enjoyable conversations and laugh. But it's just that relationship, that face-to-face, that just seals that extra 100 yards when you're sitting down with a client. As you mentioned, I'm a bit saturated on Zoom calls. So now with the video call, it's a 365 year-round market. To have a market or not to have it is really not going to damage a sale or not. You'll still be able to pitch it and do all that you need to do without the market. But yet, that feeling, that human nature feeling of sitting down with somebody, shaking hands, it's let's have a drink, let's have lunch, dinner, breakfast, whatever. That whole aura in the negotiation, the art of the negotiation is what's lacking here. And that's what we miss the most, or I miss the most. We are eager and hungry to have, these markets come back. But does that mean that we're going to be selling less? I don't know. I don't think so. But does it mean that the relationship will nurture or will capture new clients or, meet more people or, expand your network? Yeah, for sure.
perhaps impacts on that new business, if you like, and those
Exactly.
new opportunities. Yeah.
Or to expand your network of people, because you meet clients in all these new markets, in some way, shape, or form, be it at a cocktail, at a gathering, at a bumping into a hallway, somebody introduces you to them. That particular situation you don't have with Zoom calls.
Yeah. What's your next attempt at a market then? Cesar? What's your plan? Is it in the States, presumably something domestic in the States?
Let's look at the COVID variant trend map. Here in the US, we're at the peak of the Omicron, which experts say should be dying down or tithering off in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, we're hearing of this new Flurona type variant.
What? I haven't heard of this. What's this called?
Flurona.
Flurona.
Yeah.
No, that's not really.
Yeah. So if that were to be something that is going to spark and take off, then that means that, I don't know, maybe by March or April. So I don't know, but my hopes up that by that, at least at MIP, we should have something that would be, interesting to go to. So I don't know. I mean, it's something that now I'm more hesitant to commit to a market so early on. So it's a wait and see situation. But nonetheless, I mean, as I mentioned, we're hungry for this type of market. We are eager to attend. And I don't know. I mean, the markets obviously change in that situation, and all the protocols that need to be in place. But reputable firms such as the MIPS and the NatPes, I'm sure that we'll start to have later on the second semester of this year. I'm sure we'll have something for sure.
We all look forward to seeing our friends from all around the world gathering together at various events. So let's keep our fingers crossed that we don't get any more of those variants. But looking forward to 2022 and ignoring COVID for a second. But do you see any major trends in the region, Cesar, that you can share with us in terms of buying trends, in terms of content trends?
For Latin America, the region, I think that I find more and more companies, especially streamers, looking into having content that comes out of Latin America, original Latin American content, whether it be movies or series or scripted shows, but that are more from Latin America, which we've been talking about it. It has sprung off all these original productions coming out of the regions. That's going to strengthen the need for that type of content.
Sounds very healthy to me. It sounds like, as a result of streaming boom and indirectly of COVID, then local production seems to be a good place to be at the moment.
I think so. I mean, we're doubling down on that, to see if it continues in a healthy trend.
And now it's time for Story of the Week, the TV industry news story that's caught my guest's eye in the past 7 days. What's your story of the week?
Well, I think it's too obvious to have Natpe cancellation as a story of the week, because it's happened. I mean, we can't hide away from that. So looking at something else, though, I'm looking at how, the SVOD services are shaping around in Latin America, and just sort of saw the news or caught the news that, for example, Netflix is raising its prices, Just looking at the whole media of SVOD in Latin America, how many SVOD services are we in Latin America going to be able to afford? That caught my attention several months ago when I was hearing a radio show here exactly on that issue. And they were interviewing a person who had decided to cancel their cable bill because they were paying sort of like $290 a month for cable. And so she said, well, I'm getting rid of this and just going to subscribe to 2 or 3. So I'm going to subscribe to HBO and I'm going to subscribe to Netflix. And she started off doing that. And then another service came up and said, oh, it's $4.99. Let me do that again, $4.99. And then another service came by. And then at the end of about 8 or 9 months after that, she was finding out that she was paying 200 plus in all type of SVOD services. So it was like, it was a turnaround. And going back to the same issue of spending that much amount of money. In Latin America, I don't think that people are going to be able to enjoy that many services or be able to subscribe to that many services. So there's obviously going to be a or even if there is right now, there's a bottleneck as to how many services can you actually subscribe to in Latin America, where obviously the majority of the consumers may not have access to, being so frivolous in spending so much in services and stuff. In Latin America, they'd rather, and it's been proven, the polls do mention or give out data that they don't mind watching at commercials in lieu of not having to pay anything. So I wonder, how many SVOD services are going to be able to continue to increase their pricing in Latin America.
It goes back to what we were saying earlier on. Is it surely that would say enter the fast channels, right? Enter AVOD.
Sure.
If consumers are used to watching ads, they don't mind it. They're used to that on cable, etc. So, there's certainly enough content. Maybe we'll see the market catching up the rest of the world when it comes to fast.
It's certainly an opportunity for the AVODs, yeah.
And is that something you'd ever consider, Cesar, for yourself, as setting up an AVOD, in terms of building that sort of platform and service?
Remember, I'm a one-man band, so, I wouldn't be able to do it myself, but I certainly, as a consultant, sure, be able to get in with other entities who may need a little bit of, a knowledge of the Latin American scenario or landscape. And that's where I'm most helpful at.
And now it's time for Hero of the Week and Get in the Bin.
Hero of the Week, again, tough one. But there's right now in the UK, Boris Johnson is getting clobbered with all the parties that were happening at number 10. While they were on rules and of restriction. So I think he's just the hero of the week because he's just, getting punched all over the place. And so.
All right. Okay. Many people would say whether the heroes are the ones who are giving the punches.
I leave it open.
Okay. Well, if Boris Johnson is a hero, then who are you telling to get in the bin?
On the other side of the spectrum, I would guess, or halfway around the world, we're seeing the Djokovic and the Australian Open.
Novak Djokovic.
Yeah. Yes. I respect the sport. I respect him as a player. I love watching him. He's a great player. There's no doubt. But as I've heard many reports and many people say, at one point, you just cannot be above the game. And unfortunately, I have to part with that too. I mean, and I don't think it's fully his fault. I think there's been a screw up there and he's getting the wrong end of the stick. But nevertheless, you're the protagonist. And so you're getting all the heat for it. This should have been resolved totally different. I think he pushed the issue. And you can't. I mean, at one point you got to say, this is, and he said it, it's not about me, it's about the sports. Yeah, but you were there, you should have pulled out, and gotten off with it. So unfortunately, it's what it is, but certainly that shouldn't have happened. The way it was handled.
Yeah, well, also there was a report that I saw that he'd also been out, because he's obviously not vaccinated, which is one of the main things, but he's also been out when he actually had COVID as well. It was found out that he'd actually been, I think it was an interview or in Belgrade, I think it was. So unfortunately, he's painted himself into a bit of a corner, I think, when it comes to the whole vaccination scenario.
Yeah. And again, you cannot be above the sport. I mean, you gotta. I mean, the rules are rules, and you got to abide by the rules sometimes. Especially if everybody else is, doing it. There's a lot of controversial. There's a lot of opinions, but then it is what it is. And it's tough. But unfortunately,
he's going in the bin.
Yeah,
he's going in the bin for the second week running. Actually, Haley Babcock last week put Djokovic in the bin. So there you go. That's a double fault for Djokovic. All right. All right. Listen, thank you so much for joining us from sunny Miami while we're all freezing. The frost's on the ground and the rain's falling in London and the rest of Northern Europe, shivering away. So enjoy your a lovely climate. Sadly, we can't be with you.
Believe me when I tell you that I wish Natpe would have happened so all of you could have come down and enjoyed the weather and the business.
Well, it would have been a great way to kick off the year, which it often is. Next year, we look forward to seeing you next year in the region, and I'm sure that'll be much sweeter for the long wait.
Again, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
My next guest this week is Fabricio Ferrara, International Business Director at LATAM TV industry publication, Prensario International. Fabricio, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Justin, to be invited here. It's such an honor, and for a second time. So we are very happy. Thank you.
We were going to be at Natpe this week. We know about that. And sadly, you're in Buenos Aires and I'm in the UK. And I was looking up, and it's the first and the last time you came on the show was July 2020, which is nearly 18 months ago. Feels like only yesterday, but it's amazing how quickly times fly. How have things been for you, and how have things been at Prensario? Because I remember our last conversation, you know, there was all sorts of difficulties in South America with COVID and various different governments' approaches to vaccinations, all that sort of stuff.
Well, you know that South America and Latin America in general, we are used to be unstable. So we are very, very aware of every things of the economy and the pandemic. Of course, we take care. Situation is very, very under control in many countries, specifically talking about the vaccination. But, you know, this virus changes, and now most of the key economies like Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, they're being heavily impacted by the Omicron. So most of the situation is still running as usual, but the governments are taking more precautions on flights and on how the people needs to move. Of course, the most important thing on this side is economy, which is not so good as used to be. Now the situation, of course, is getting better because the industry started to recover their numbers. But of course, we are expecting a full opening by the second half of the semester. We are all hoping that, as I said at the beginning, we are not able to secure anything at this point. But I believe that if we talk about audiovisual industry, the situation is much better compared to the 2020 and the previous year to the pandemic.
The last time we spoke, a number of the big streamers had just launched or were preparing to launch. So we've seen all these big media juggernauts launching their streaming services. Have we seen the same level of success for SVODs in LATAM as we've seen in other territories and regions around the world?
Well, I think the situation is pretty similar in other regions if we compare in numbers of the increasing subscribers and increasing users of this system. In 2021, we saw the launch of Star Plus from Disney, which is a very premium SVOD with sports and very, very top serials and movies, which is launching a lot of new production, original production this year as well. And we also see the launch of HBO Max. You know that Latin America was the first territory, international territory outside the US to be launched first. So it was a great honor, and I think that the platform is doing very, very well. We also have other independents, and we also have other major to come. Let's say about Peacock. Nobody knows when it's going to be launched from NBC Universal, but the system is starting the rollout internationally, and it's doing very, very well as well. So we are here, and most of the majors like them, but also Amazon and Netflix, they are increase a lot the production level and the production number. And this is one of the reasons that the industry in Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Argentina, and Brazil are very active, because the number of original has increased a lot, really. I would say that due to many aspects, mainly because of the bigger number of operators, but I would say that almost double our production if we compare to 2019. So most of the production companies or production houses are offering their services. There are more places to produce, There are more incentives like Uruguay, like Colombia, Mexico. So there are new countries that are taking more seriously to incentive and to do cash rebates systems in their country. So I think that the field is very good, and for the future we expect a lot of production from these players. I would say that between now to 2025, most of them will produce almost 2 or 3 digits in terms of production development, and not only drama, because this is something important. It's not only serials or movies. We are also seeing a huge investment in docu-series, docu-realities, entertainment format, variety. I mean, most of these streamers are thinking beyond the drama production.
So really, you think the impact of streaming has been very positive to the LATAM region overall?
Yes, and I think that it's very common to find talking with people of different targets and different ages, and they have adopted very well these digital players. I can tell you about my father, who is almost 65, and he talked to me about Pluto TV as it is a very easy system to use. And I was surprised at the very beginning because even though the companies Viacom CBS, they did a huge investments with Paramount Plus. They launched the services in 2021, if I'm not wrong. They also launched Pluto TV the previous year. So everything was very, very interesting in terms of marketing. But the people of age, they really find it useful and very easy to find content. And this is something I get surprised every time, and it's something to be highlighted. The other thing is that, of course, we have the broadcasters. We have another huge amount of players like linear TV on the pay TV or the free world. And they also have to adapt it, of course. The number of original productions increase because they need the local taste. They need the local feedback from the audience so they can be secure on that field. But they were also impact by the advertising market, of course. So they need to readapt their strategy and their programming. Not all the broadcasters are the same, but I can say that as a general trend that most of the TV channels, local and regionals in these territories from Latin America, they adapted the situation to more local and more regional formats, variety, magazines, and they increased the number of those shows on their grids.
I wondered, these legacy media companies, how have they dealt with these seismic shocks of no advertising and then all the streamers coming to camp on their backyard? But have there been any major mergers and acquisitions happening across the region, or have you seen it more about they're reacting by becoming more hyper-local in their content output?
Well, I think we have to divide the legacy media companies in two groups. On the first side, we have the traditional broadcasters, which are very local or very regional in these countries. We can mention especially companies in Central America or the Andean region, of course in Argentina as well. But we also have the other big groups, like Globo in Brazil, like Televisa in Mexico. In the South Con, we have Viacom CBS with Telefe, and now, since this year, with Chilevisión, the number one network in Chile. So we have different kind of broadcasters, or what they used to be a broadcaster. On the first group, on the traditional linear TV, what we are seeing is that they are more focused on two topics. First, the one I mentioned, which is original production. Most of them are adapting international formats, and they're producing their own entertainment formats. Not yet drama, but they are focusing on formats for the prime time. And second, they are trying to make more digital. They are launching their own TV everywhere system. They are offering more content online. They are producing exclusive content for social media. So I am seeing the reaction of the streamers' impact in that way. And on the bigger group, what I'm seeing is that they are moving faster. They are adapting more to the trends. They are acquiring more assets, like I said, Viacom CBS with Chilevisión. Not only that, they also acquire the production company in Colombia called Telecolombia and Studios Telemexico. So they added thousands of programming hours to Paramount Plus and to create new channels on Pluto TV. So what I'm saying is that merge and acquisition still moving, apart from the big ones. Of course, we are expecting to see what's going to happen with Discovery Plus and Warner Media's HBO Max. Everything is about to be done. Nothing official yet, and I assume that there are more launches to be done in the next couple of months and year. But I would say that the focus now is on how to create content, how to be relevant as a production company or as a creative agency for these big streamers. And I can say that the 5 top of them are very active on that side. On the distribution side, following with the streaming business, they are also very active on one business, which is distribution. Of course, they are big brands like Disney, Fox. Well, sorry, Disney and Fox are the same. But I would say Disney, Viacom CBS, everything is all together. It's very clear for the audience, but they need still to be partnering with telcos, with pay TV operators, e-commerce. There is a big e-commerce in Latin America called Mercado Libre, which is our Amazon. And they are also very active looking for partnership with HBO Max, with Disney, and distributing these apps to new clients all around the territory. So this is something very interesting as well.
So in terms of disruption then, have we seen any significant disruption in any particular territories, or are you feeling that all the territories in LATAM have generally adapted pretty effectively at the same sort of time as a result of these changes brought on by COVID?
Well, I can tell you, Justin, that disruption is the new game here. If you are not disruptive, if you are not fresh, if you don't produce something original, you are out of the business. So what I'm seeing is that there are many examples we can mention. There is one which is very interesting to analyze, is what happened in Brazil with Globo. Globo is a very traditional player with almost 70 years producing telenovelas and dramas. And I remember the last time we were talking together here, we were with one of their sellers talking about the trends. But what I can say about Globo is that they definitely changed the scope. They had in the past the broadcaster. In Brazil is a huge market. When you have one rating point is 1 million people watching your series, is a lot of people watching that movie. So or that series. But when they decided to reinforce the global play, their OTT and SVOD system, they decided to put the digital first. They decided to create originals first to be developed and launched on global play. And this is something very disruptive. It is not something new. It's something that has 1 or 2 years, but it's something that changed definitely the market, because they first launched the program on OTT for Brazil and for the world, because they are also rolling out the service in the US and Europe, and then they launched it in Brazil. So this is something very interesting if we consider that almost 60% of the people in Brazil is more focused on free TV, on linear free TV. But we can also mention some examples in other parts of the world. In terms of contents, there are much more examples, but in terms of business, I would say that the one from Globo is a very interesting to highlight.
That was interesting, and yes, Angela Colo, we were talking to her on that show back in July in 2020, and she was telling us about how that was developing. But fascinating. Okay, so when it comes to content, Fabricio, well, have you seen any super successful shows or formats in particular launching during COVID in LATAM that perhaps might never have worked otherwise?
Well, we can always mention the big shows that were not only successful in Latin America, but also around the world. Let's say Netflix, Squid Game, or Money Heist with the last season, HBO Max Succession, Euphoria. From Disney, we can mention, of course, The Mandalorian or Loki or other from the Marvel universe. But we also have the original series. We have recently access to a study from WIT Media, who indicated that there are some shows from Latin America that are traveling very well, not only in Latin America, but especially outside the region, like the regional Netflix drama series Who Killed Sarah, who was produced in Mexico, or the Brazilian series, fantastic series called Invisible City, or, of course, the two biggest examples from Amazon Prime, which are the El Presidente, whose second season is being launched this year, and, of course, Maradona, Sueño Bendito, the biopic from Diego Armando Maradona. So I would say that most of the streamers are very focused on creating this unique and original content, but not only international topics, but also very local, very, very regional, because, local programming is something that they have found is the key driver to increase their subscriptions. And it's not only in the field of the regional, because of course they will produce a lot of that, but also in terms of acquisitions, they are acquiring local content which is available on their streamers, and they are also doing very well in that field. So I would say that if we have to talk about success right now, I would mention those from big streamers. We also have local successes like Telefe here in Argentina with the second and third season of MasterChef. But I will have to talk about very local or very regional things. If we talk about the region in general, I will mention these titles.
In your viewpoint, how big a blow was the cancellation of Natpe Miami for the industry in the region?
Well, there are many aspects to analyze. Of course, I would say that the majority of the industry was expecting Natpe as Natpe Miami as the very first meeting point for the business and the industry after pandemic. But unfortunately, this variant, Omicron, it made it impossible. It was very risky to have all these people in Miami at this point. So what I can say is that most of them say, okay, this is not the best scenario. But then suddenly they understand that they should transform their physical meeting into virtual. And something interesting we analyze is that even though the market itself, Natpe, was not having any digital platform to replace the physical market, a market was created. And from Prensario, we made some surveys with distributors, with producers, and with, of course, streamers and buyers. What the majority of them say is that even though the cancellation was made, they had their meetings. And there is a reason for that. The true reason of that is that there's a bigger need of content from all players on all screens, and also there new content to be sold. So the market was created naturally. And I can tell you that during this week, we are receiving information from this survey that is saying that between 10 to 20 companies, 10 to 20 meetings are being done each of them. So this is an average number, of course. But we also found the situation is not only concentrated this week. They already have meetings the previous week when the market was canceled, and they're going to have more meetings after the market. So what we are seeing is that the frontiers of the events and the trade shows are not only focused on 1 week, 2 days, 3 days. Most of the people, they have integrated the virtual meetings to their day-to-day business, and this is something that we are going to see much more in the next years for sure.
So I'm guessing, Fabricio, the next time I'll see you might be MIP TV in Cannes. Will you be making the trip over in April?
I hope to. We are very keen to be in Cannes again for, I would say, yes, it will be 2 years from now on, because we were not able to go to 2020 MIP TV. And we were not able to attend MIPCOM last year, but I think MIP TV is going to happen. It's going to be happening again. Not sure. Again, they say the format is going to be different. They will integrate other shows and other parts of different shows like Cannes series, like EBAR, and many things related to the new technologies. So we are happy to be there. Yes, definitely.
Thank you, Fabricio, for coming on the show. Really great to have you on, and wishing you all the best for you and Prensario International.
Thank you so much, Justin. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for making me part of the show. I'm very happy.
Well, that's about it for this week's show. As always, I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to TellyCast and share it with friends and colleagues. We've got a brand new website that includes exclusive feature content from TV's opinion leaders and journalists. They're all free to access. Just sign up on TellyCast.com. And why not sign up for our free newsletter, TellyCast Plus? You can also follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. TellyCast was edited by Ian Chambers and recorded in London. Until next week's show, as always, stay safe.